Hello, I'm Alice McVeigh, and this is some highlights from an event that I put on last September in honor of Jane Austen's 250th year. It was with my string quartet, a solo soprano, a solo flute, and me reading bits from Jane Austen's immortal works. In this clip, from my Pride and Perjury, this is Caroline Bingley's diary. You'll notice at once that I don't perceive Caroline as being particularly bright. I have probably made her sister, Louisa Hurst, rather brighter than Austen did.
When I told my dear sister Louisa what I found out, she cried, "You silly creature, of course you are in love with him, I should think, for the whole of the past half year." "But how might you know better than myself?" I asked her. "Oh, heavens," said Louisa, "because of the way you dog his footsteps, because of the way you hang upon his lightest word and endorse his every opinion. The question is, instead, how can you have been so self-deceived, and about your own feelings besides? But, my dear Louisa, do advise me," said I. "Whatever shall I do?" She laughed. "But then, well, if you are truly serious and truly willing to be guided," and that was the beginning of the plan. This is what Louisa shared with me. 1. Men do not wish to be hounded. By this she seems to mean that men need time to be on their own, which may be the reason why her own husband is so often asleep upon the settee. It is best, therefore, not to be continually plaguing them, but to be gracious when they seek our company instead. 2. While agreeing with men might be pleasing to them, it can be carried to excess. For this reason, Louisa advised that I limit myself to only 3 agreements with Mr. Darcy each day. Note, she later amended this to 2. Oh dear.
In this clip from Pride and Perjury, which I wrote, Caroline Bingley is pretending to be absolutely thrilled that Darcy is to marry Elizabeth.
I practiced a good deal under Louisa's tuition until I could accomplish it with perfect conviction. "Yes, of course, I've heard that Mr. Darcy is engaged. I'm not the least affected. No. Truly, Mr. Darcy was never my sort. He's well enough, to be sure, but too intense, too serious, too bookish for my taste. We should have been miserable together. Such a good thing he never offered to me. And, of course, I was always particularly close to Miss Elizabeth Bennet, as was one of my dearest friends, in fact. So quick, so witty, and with such fine eyes."
As everyone knows, Lizzie's youngest sister, Lydia, elopes with George Wickham when she's in Brighton. We don't know how this happened, because Jane Austen never tells us, but that did not stop me imagining what happened in my Pride and Perjury.
The next day, Lydia was in a shop with Wickham, lingering so long before some heliotrope ribbons that he grew bored enough to say, "My dear Miss Bennet, if you admire them to such an extent as that, why, I shall buy some for you." Lydia turned shining eyes upon him. Really, she was not an ill-looking girl, thought Wickham. "Oh, heavens, no, for that would not be proper," said Lydia, vaguely remembering her mamma's admonitions on the subject. But perhaps she had misremembered, and the ribbons did make her eyes seem so vivid a blue. Wickham said gravely, "Ribbons, I assure you, are perfectly proper, especially when one considers how well the colour matches your eyes." Lydia said, "Oh, well, in that case, if you do buy me a ribbon or two, why, every time I wear them, I shall think of you." And as they left the shop, she said impudently, "Well then, what have you done with my ribbons? I hope you are not going to give them to some other blue-eyed lady." Wickham said, "I have not the slightest intention of doing so," glancing round to ensure that no other member of the regiment was about. "But first you must pay me for them, though not with money." "But how else could one pay for anything?" asked Lydia. "My currency differs from most people," said Wickham, boldly. "I wish to be paid with a kiss." This was just the kind of flirting that Lydia liked. She was about to make some comment when she found herself kissed. Colour flooded her face at the sensation so often imagined but never experienced before. She laughed. "Oh, you are impossible, Wickham. You do realize that you are quite impossible." I have often enough been told so, said he. So, do you make a habit of kissing ladies, then? Only if they are excessively pretty. And do they never object? That depends, said Wickham. Upon the quality of the kiss, she asked. Upon the quality, said Wickham, of the lady.
This is a musical quote from Pride and Prejudice. Here, Darcy is listening to Elizabeth play the piano and becoming more and more intrigued by her wit. Meanwhile, his aunt is being rather a pain.
Lady Catherine called out, "What are you talking of to Miss Bennet? What are you telling Miss Bennet? Let me hear what it is." "We were talking of music, madam," said Darcy, when no longer able to avoid a reply. "Of music? Then pray speak aloud, as it is of all subjects my delight. I must have my share in the conversation if you are speaking of music. There are few people in England, I suppose, who have more true enjoyment of music than myself, or better natural taste. If I had ever learnt, I should have been a great proficient, as would my daughter, had her health allowed her to apply. How does Georgiana get on, Darcy?" Mr. Darcy spoke with affectionate praise of his sister's proficiency in music. "I'm very glad to hear such a good account," said Lady Catherine, "and pray tell her from me that she cannot expect to excel if she does not practice a very great deal." "I assure you, madam," said Darcy, "she does not need such advice. My sister practices very constantly." "So much the better. It cannot be done too much, and when I next write to her, I shall charge her not to neglect it upon any account. I often tell young ladies that no excellence in music is to be acquired without constant practice. I've told Miss Bennet several times that she will never play really well unless she practices more, and she is very welcome to come here every morning and to play on the pianoforte in the governess's room. She would be in nobody's way, you know, in that part of the house."
Here I'm reading from Austen's immortal Pride and Prejudice, and of course it is part of the big scene when Lady Catherine de Bourgh attacks Elizabeth in the grounds of Longbourn.
You can be at no loss, Miss Bennet, to understand the reason for my journey hither. A report of a most alarming nature reached me 2 days ago. I was told that you, Miss Elizabeth Bennet, would likely be united to my nephew, my own nephew, Mr. Darcy. I instantly resolved, upon setting off for here, that I might make my sentiments known to you, though it is, of course, impossible. If you believed it impossible, said Elizabeth, colouring with astonishment and disdain, I wonder you took the trouble of coming so far. Why, your coming to Longbourn would be rather a confirmation of it, if indeed such a report is in existence. This is not to be borne, Miss Bennet. I insist upon being satisfied. Has my nephew, made you an offer of marriage? Your ladyship has declared it to be impossible. It ought to be so, it must be so, while he retains the use of his reason. But your arts and allurements may have drawn him in. If I have, said Elizabeth, I should be the last person to confess it. Miss Bennet, this match, to which you have the presumption to aspire, can never take place, never. Mr. Darcy is engaged to my daughter. Now what have you to say?